We're doing good? Hope we're all alive, doing well. If you're breathing, you're alive, just in case you were wondering. Turn to the person next to you and just say, boom, chicka, wow, wow. Turn to the person on the other side and say, boom, chicka, wow, wow, wow. That's what I say to my wife. I always throw the extra wow in. Boom, chicka, wow, wow, wow. See, somebody just found a husband or a wife. You just never know. It's brilliant. We've been doing we've probably been through a really trying time this last 6 or 7 months. Has been some of the best and worst days of our lives. So Sharon my wife has been in and out of hospital since September last year, and just had spent probably, it was 10 weeks was the last stint in hospital. Just came out probably a few weeks before I came here, before I left to come here. And along with that, we've had all sorts of issues with our property sale and the enemy just wanting to keep us contained. And so I went and opened new offices up on the other side in the new area where we're going to move. I threw our offices out there and got our leadership team out there, and we've started to make inroads in the new area. We're seeing God do some opening amazing doors of opportunity out there, and they're very excited. It's a very anti-church area, and there's no churches out there, and they're very excited to see us coming in because we're so involved in the community. And we found out there's 2,584 homeless people in that city where we're going. And that's 2,584 under the age of 25 homeless people. So we thought, who's going to do something about that? We are. And, how do you think we got this good? I'll get rid of this because I'm not a comedian and I don't really need a stool with a glass of water on it. Although some would argue, yeah. All right. So we've seen God do some good things, and we've seen, and so why we're doing that, why we're going through this transitional period, one thing I've realised is that you've got to keep your vision intact. And so earlier this year, I did a series on vision, and so I want to do that. It's called Can You See What I See? I haven't got the CD series with me or anything, so you're just going to have to hear 2 messages today from that series. And so I want to look at this whole issue of vision, because without vision, people perish, right? You've got to have a vision for your future. Without a vision for your future, you return to your past. And I've seen it time and time again where people don't have a vision for their future, or something comes along and clouds that vision, and then they fall back into the ways of the way things used to be. And it's easy for them to just slip back into a complacent, boring Bob from Beige World kind of life. I don't know about you, I don't want to be boring Bob from Beige World, okay? I want some colour in my life, okay? I want people to know that I've got colour, that I stand out from the crowd. I'm not just going to be boring Bob from Beige World. That's why I'm constantly playing pranks on people, and if you have a look on my Facebook, there's a good picture of Mark there after he rubbed some hemp lotion on himself, and how he just passed out and then woke up hungry, and I couldn't work out what the issue was. So that's on my Facebook page. You can go to that. By the way, they spelt my name wrong. He missed the C out. The C is really important in the Schaper. Yeah, the C's really important. Hey? At the end. Yeah. Hey? It's actually Schaper. It's a Dutch name. So you've got to say it and do a rollback at the same time. That's how they say it. So that's good. All right. You ready to get into it? All right. Do you know that on at least 3 separate occasions, Jesus came to visionless people, and he had encounters with those visionless people, and on 3 occasions, he asked them what they wanted from him. Now, they must have been thinking, what, is he blind too? Can't you see? I've got a problem. I can't see. But I think he did this for a reason. All 3 times they responded, we want vision. We want our vision back, right? They were visionless. They were blind. They couldn't see. And the title of this message is actually called Baby, I Was Born This Way. So 3 times in Matthew 20, the 2 blind men, Jesus stopped and called them. What do you want me to do for you? He asked. Lord, they answered, we want our sight. In Mark 10:51, it says, what do you want me to do for you? Jesus asked him. The blind man said, Rabbi, I want to see. That's the story of blind Bartimaeus. In Luke 18, a blind beggar, Jesus ordered that the man be brought to him in verse 40 and asked him, what do you want me to do for you? Lord, I want to see. 3 times he asked visionless people what they wanted from him, and 3 times they answered, we want our vision back. Why? Because they understood that the way out of the situation that they were in was to be able to see again, was to be able to have vision for their future. They were not going to get out of their current situation unless they had a vision for their future. Well, I want to look at in this first part here this morning, we're going to be looking at baby I was born this way. What happens when you're born into a situation? What happens when you're born into a scenario? What happens when your life experience has taught you to be blind, to be visionless, has told you that you can't have a vision? Well, you know, no matter what Lady Gaga says, you're not stuck. Right? We're not simply born this way and we're stuck as just this, even the DNA that you have. I mean, it's amazing things that they find out with DNA and genetics and stuff and how things go from generation to generation genetically. But it just means you've got a genetic predisposition. It means that if all the right circumstances come together, you'll probably go in that direction. But if you choose not to, you can still choose against what your DNA says. And that's why Jesus said things like, you must be born again. See, it doesn't matter what you were born into. It doesn't matter what the situation is. You must be born again. That you can be born afresh, born into a new way of thinking and a new way of seeing and a new way of doing. You're not stuck in your circumstance. You're not stuck being just this person that is just going through the motions and born into whatever situations and stuck there. You are not stuck. So we're going to look at John chapter 9 and we're going to follow this story through of what happens when you're born without vision. In verse 1 it says he saw a man blind from birth. What can Jesus do for those who are born into something? Well, the disciples, they asked him, they looked for who should we blame. They asked, Rabbi, who sinned that this man or his parents, that he was born blind? So everyone wants to know why. Whose fault is it? How can we who do we put the blame on? Well, Jesus' response was completely the opposite to what they expected. Everyone else saw a problem. Jesus saw an opportunity. He said, neither this man nor his parents sinned, said Jesus, but this happened so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. Goes on in verse 4 and says, as long as it is day, we must do the work of him who sent me. And then he says, night is coming when no one can work. And while I'm in the world, verse 5, I am the light of the world. In other words, he's saying, look, it's my nature to do mighty works. And I'm going to bring light to the situation. Now the story just gets weird. All right, having said this, he spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it in the man's eyes. Now imagine you're a blind man. And you're standing around and you're thinking, you know, I've heard about this Jesus. I've heard about the possibilities. I've heard about people who were healed. People had heard about what he was doing. And then you hear this. Now, it had to have been a good guzzy. I mean, it had to have been a good all the way from the back of your throat, you know, because he made a good saliva pie, okay? That's what it says. And then you're standing there and everyone's going, oh, Jesus, oh, right? And then all of a sudden, you know, Jesus is down there, you know, happy days in the summertime. He's making mud pies, right? And then all of a sudden the guy's thinking, what's going on? And then he's thinking, what is that? And then before he can say, what is that? In the other eye. Oh! Now this is weird, right? This is a weird situation. This is not your average, you know, hey, you know, heal me. Okay, well, can you do it clean? Can we do it without saliva mud pies? I mean, why would he tell this guy, why would he do this in this way? I mean, very rarely healed people in the same way. Why? Because he wanted people not to hook in on a method, but on who the healer is. Right? So many times we like to hook in on a method. Well, there's a method for getting healed. If you do A, B, C, you get healed. No, you don't. Right? You don't. If you follow the method, you don't get healed. It doesn't work like that. Okay? You go to the healer. And I don't know why some people get healed and why some people don't. I don't know why Paul had a thorn in the flesh. His whole ministry had this thorn in the flesh. Some people believe it was his wife. Seriously, theologians argue about this issue. They believe he was married, and that as a Sadducee, that he was married because he was Sadducee, and so he was married, and that when he left, he had to leave his wife behind. You know, that they took his wife, and that he had to separate himself from his wife as a Sadducee. So some theologians argue that the thorn in the flesh was his wife. I could agree with that. I could certainly understand feeling like that. Others believe he had some sort of sickness or ailment, and so theologians, they argue about this issue. But whatever it was, whether it was his wife or it may have been both, right? But he had a thorn in the flesh. So I don't understand why he had to live with this thorn in the flesh. I just know there was no method to getting rid of it. Okay? He went to the healer every day. He died to Christ every day of his life, and he gave himself. I don't know why some people do and some people don't, but it's unorthodox. This is an unorthodox moment here. That's what I know. And that no method makes it happen. All I know is do what Jesus tells you to do. And Jesus goes on in verse 7, he says, go, he told him, wash in the pool of Siloam, which means sent. So wash in the pool of the sent. And so the man went and washed and came home seeing. He went blind, but he came home seeing, right? Filled with vision, filled with opportunity. So I want to look at very quickly this morning 5 things. Everyone say 5 things. 5 things vision can do for you. Number 1. Everyone say 1. I said everyone say 1. Everyone say 1. That's much better. Possessing vision will help you see a way out. So the man, verse 7, went and washed and came home seeing. He went blind, but he came home seeing. He went blind, but he came home seeing, right? So, vision will help you to see a way out. He went one way, he came home seeing. He'd never seen a way out before. He was born this way. He was stuck. He was stuck going through survival mode every day. He was stuck, not seeing, visionless, not being able to see any vision for his future, not being able to see any possibility or any way out of what he was stuck in. This was the first time he'd seen. He'd been blind from birth. He went blind but came home seeing. Vision will help you see a way out. You've got to get vision into your life and vision into your situation, otherwise you won't see a way out. Does this make sense? U2 years ago, they wrote that song, stuck in a moment. I'm stuck in a moment, I can't get out of it. Many people feel like that. They feel like, and when you've been constantly battered, constantly bashed, constantly berated, constantly, the enemy's bombarded your life. Whenever you're feeling just constant, relentless pressure, it's easy to fall into the trap of saying, I'm just going to stay here. It's just easier to stay here. It's easy not to have vision. It's easy not to believe for things. When you believe for something, you put yourself out there. So you're believing for something, you put yourself out there, well, it doesn't happen. I'd rather believe for 100 things and one thing happen than believe for nothing and get it every time. Come on, you with me? I'd rather put myself out there. Some people in our church say, well, not everything you say is happening. I say, well, that's because I've got vision. If you had vision, maybe, and that's why I called this series, Can You See What I See? So that even though all the things that we were saying, hey, some of the things we're saying are happening, maybe not all of the things we're saying are happening, but we're heading in the direction and I've still got vision. Can you see what I see? I can see the people in that area being fed. Right now we're negotiating with a whole bunch of business people in that area to set up a soup kitchen so that we can start feeding people. And we're not even there yet. Just our office is out there. Our church hasn't even relocated yet. But I'm still got vision for the future. You with me? So what you see is what you'll get. If you see nothing, you'll get it every time. But if you start to see something, then it opens up possibilities. It opens up opportunities. Okay, number 2. Everyone say 2. It's important to have number 2 in your life. It always is. You know what they say? Without number 2, you'll die, right? Possessing vision will cause others to see you differently. When you start to have vision, people will look at you and they will view you differently than they did before. Listen in verse 8 what goes on. It says, his neighbours and those who had formerly seen him begging asked, isn't this the same man who used to sit and beg? Some claimed that he was. Others said, no, he only looks like him. But he himself insisted, I am the man. Listen, this was the same guy that had been begging, the same guy that had been blind from birth, the same guy doing the same thing every day. And now that he had vision, people couldn't recognize him anymore. To a point where he had to insist to them, that's me, I'm the guy. I was sitting down. I used to see that spot, see those 2 little dents where my bum cheeks used to be every day. You know, where my butt cheeks were right there. That's where I sat every day. I've worn holes in the rock on the side of the road where I used to sit because I've sat there since birth, since I was a child, and begged for money every day. But now he's got vision. People can't recognize him anymore. They look at him completely different. You know, when you have vision, people will struggle to recognize you. They'll say, what happened to you? I've got vision. I can see things. I don't see things the same anymore. I'm not just going through the motions of life anymore. I'm not just in survival mode anymore. I'm not just hoping to get through the day anymore. I can see possibility for my life. I can see things differently now than I've ever seen in my life. I can see that I can have a future. I can see that there's hope for me yet. Are you with me? You know, the people will look at you, they'll go, is that you? I can hardly recognize you. Well, of course you can't recognize me. I've got vision. And you're still visionless. And until you get some vision, you're not going to recognize me. You're going to look at me and go, you're weird. How can you keep believing when all that stuff's happening to you? Well, I've got vision. I can see beyond the situation. You know, you have seasons in life. And if you get stuck in the season, if you get stuck, you know, when you're in the middle of a storm, don't stay there. You know, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, the point is you are walking through the valley of the shadow of death. Don't stop. Keep going. Oh, well, I've brisked past the shadow of death. Well, that's fine. I was almost dead, but I'm not. I've walked past. Is this making sense? You got to keep going. Was that you? I hardly reckon. You've changed so much. Yeah, I have. I've changed. See, vision people are standout people. They stand out from the crowd. This guy, before he had vision, he used to blend into the background. He was the guy everyone ignored going past. Every day of their lives, they saw this. They knew this guy existed, but he was irrelevant. Now he had vision. Everything was different. Right, number 3. Everyone say 3. Possessing vision. Gee, you're so good. Everyone say 3. Possessing vision will enable you to see the difference between the facts and the truth. You know, you've got the Pharisees, the fact finders, okay? The I see it, but I don't believe it people, right? The Pharisees, the Jews, still do not believe. Verse 18. Did not believe that he'd been blind and had received his sight until they sent for the man's parents. Is this your son, they asked, verse 19. Is this the one that you say was born blind? How is it that he can now see? Uh-oh. The facts are, listen, verse 20. They give the facts. We know that he's our son, the parents answered, and we know he was born blind. But how he can see now, or who opened his eyes, we do not know. That's the fact. But the truth is, verse 25, he replied, one thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see. I don't have all the answers. I can't tell you what all the facts are, but I can tell you what the truth is. Is this making sense? There's a difference between the facts and the truth. You know, the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the wouldn't sees and the couldn't sees, right? They'll come out and they'll tell you what the facts are, and they'll tell you why you can't. You know, the facts will constantly tell you why you can't and why it's not going to happen. But the truth is that we don't give in to the facts. The facts are, but the truth is. The facts are, oh, I have sickness, see my symptoms. But the truth is the Lord is the one who heals thee. So I go to the one who heals. The facts are, I can't seem to break this habit. It's got a hold of me. I can't get beyond it. Well, the truth is, even when I can't, I can. Because I can do all things through him who gives me strength. Even when I can't, I still can. Come on, that's the point of Philippians 4:13. Okay, that's the point. Through him who strengthens me, I can do all things. You know what? I've looked up all things in the Greek. You know what it means? All things. I know you might find that amazing, but it's true. The facts are, well, you know, it's impossible to overcome this circumstance. That's impossible. It can't, you know, nobody's ever overcome that circumstance, which probably isn't true, but that's what the fact finders will say. They'll come to you, they say it can't be done. But the truth is, all things are possible for him who believes. Listen, possibility power is an amazing thing. If you can hook into the possibility power in your life, if you don't just give in to what's happening, if you don't give in to that relentless bombardment of the enemy on your life, he wants you to stay beige and boring. He wants you to stay contained and not dream big. He wants you to think small. He wants you to look at your life and what you're about. But I don't live for me. I live for a cause bigger than me. I live for something that's beyond me. He wants you to get caught up in all the things that are in your life and all the little things. You know, I'm not trying to say that these things are insignificant. Sometimes they're really significant things. You know, having my wife ill for, you know, most of the last 6 months is not insignificant. It changed our world. But it didn't change my vision. It didn't change what I was believing for. Were we bombarded? Yes, on every side. But hey, when they say it's impossible, I just keep believing. Because all things are possible for him who believes. Amen? Well, the truth is, you don't understand, you know, the facts are, I've been hurt. I'm damaged goods. You know, nobody loves me. Everybody hates me. Think I'll take some Cavantrum. Do you have Cavantrum here? It's for worms in Australia. You know. Do you have that saying in America? Nobody loves me, everybody hates me. Think I'll eat worms? No, it's an Australian thing. You know. So when people get you know, down on themselves, you know, nobody loves me, everybody hates me. Think I'll go and eat worms. So that's a very Australian colloquialism. But we also have Cavantrum, which is for worms. So I say, nobody loves me, everybody hates me. Think I'll take some Cavantrum. Yeah. You might say, you know, I'm hurt, I'm damaged goods. But the truth is, listen, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. Psalm 34, verse 18. The Lord's close to the brokenhearted. He's not far from your life. When you're broken and busted up and beaten up, God's not far from you. He's close to you. He's right there with you. It's making sense. All right, the fourth thing about vision is possessing vision will cause you to see yourself differently. Not only will others see you differently, now you'll begin to see yourself differently. In verse 25, he replied, one thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see. I don't know a lot, but this I know. I don't have the answer to everything. But I know this, I'm not a victim anymore. I'm not a victim to my circumstance anymore. I'm not a victim to the problems in my life anymore. I'm not a victim to that situation anymore. I'm not a victim any longer. I don't know everything, but I know this. I was blind, but now I see. So you'll begin to see yourself differently. He's a person now, he's gone from a person filled with, this relentless, just blending into the background of life, to now a person filled with possibility, filled with opportunity. He now looks at opposition and he doesn't see opposition, he sees opportunity. He now looks at things that are problems and he sees possibilities. Because he's understood all my life I've been filled with problems, but now I see possibilities. All my life I've had opposition, but now I see opportunity. That those things that'll take you to a whole new way of looking at things. He didn't have that victim mentality anymore. That victim mentality, when you are a victim of circumstance and a victim of what's happened to you, you will stay right there. You will not shift. I can come back and see you 10 years from now, you'll be in the same place, thinking the same things. It's one of the reasons that I don't do a lot of prophetic stuff anymore. It's because I'm sick of giving the same prophetic words to the same people every year, and they could fill up a book of prophetic words, but nothing's changed. I'm like, there's different ways of releasing the prophetic. I can do it through preaching, I can do it through prayer, there's all different ways of doing it. But sitting there and prophesying over every single individual in the room, I don't have a problem, I do it from time to time. But really, after doing it for 20 years, I realised I go back to the same place, give them the same word, and they've just got a book that's a little bit thicker, filled with the same prophecies. And I'm like, if you did the first one, go back in the book and just do the first one. Probably life might change. But instead of filling up the book with all different prophetic words, well, these are all prophetic words. They're fantastic. It doesn't mean they're going to happen. You've got to engage in them. Right? We are in co-mission, okay? Cooperation between God and man. That we are the answer. Okay? That we're it. We're plan A. God doesn't have plan B. Right? The church, you and I, right? We're it. I don't know why God's put his trust in us, but he has. I sometimes look around at the church and I think, God, why? Why? I love the way God gets people of all different age groups and races and creeds and cultural backgrounds, and he throws us all together and he shakes us up and he says, there, get along. By this, all men will know you're my disciples, that you love one another. People with problems. The difference between someone who's been hurt in church and somebody who hasn't been hurt in church is time. In order to be hurt in any relationship, whether it be church relationship, your personal relationship, friendship relationships, family relationships, all you got to do is be around it long enough and you'll get hurt. Time. Now, if you haven't been hurt in church yet, just hang around us a bit longer. Your day will come. Now, put up your hand if you have been hurt at church. Be honest. Put up your hand, hold it up high, hold it up really high. But have you been hurt by someone in church at some point in your life? Hold it up, keep it up, hold it up right now. Look around the room. You're in great company, right? It's fantastic. That's brilliant. Oh, yeah, thanks for catching on. That's brilliant. Yeah. Nice of you to join us. Yeah. Yeah, go on, blame my accent. Go on. I don't have an accent, you have an accent, okay? Americans, honestly. The World Series, and they don't let anyone else play. World champions at basketball, but no one else plays. So other countries were... Because America is the world, Yeah. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I've joined in. I get it. I understand. You guys are full of yourselves. So I get it. I love America. I really do. If I didn't, I wouldn't keep coming back. I love it here. I love being able to go out and shop any time of the day. I just love that. I love being able to go to Walmart at 3 a.m. You know why? Because you can. And so when my wife's with me, we do. We get up at 3 a.m, we just go and shop at Walmart. Just so we can say we did. You know, the art of failing forward is an amazing art. If you're going to be a person that has vision, you're going to have to learn to fail forwards. I read a book by Warren Venus years ago. He's a leadership expert. He interviewed 70 of the world's top performers in various fields, all different fields, business, sport, right across the broad spectrum. And he found that none of them viewed their mistakes as failures. When talking about their failures, they referred to them as, and I quote, learning experiences, tuition paid, detours, and opportunities for growth. See, when you have problems, you've got to learn how to fail forward. When you take 10 steps forward and then feels like you took 11 steps back, it's okay, as long as you keep going. You know, the enemy only wins in your life if you don't get up and keep going. If you stay down, that's when he wins. He won't win if you keep going. You know, if you learn to have vision, you'll see things differently. You'll be going through things and you'll see things differently. You won't see them the same as everyone else sees them. You won't see the problem in it. You'll see the possibility in it. You know, years ago I read the story, and this is a true story, about George de Mestral. He was walking his dog one afternoon, and his dog got loose. And for a moment, he ran off into this tall grass. So he chased his dog down, and finally he caught his dog, and he wasn't real happy about it. And when he retrieved his dog, he was covered in burrs. You know those little tiny, we call them prickles in Australia, you know, where they're just covered, his fur was covered in them. And so he takes his dog home, and he's not real impressed about the situation, but he's sitting there and he's cutting these burrs out of his dog's fur because it was the only way to get them out. And as he was doing this, instead of cursing his dog, he just sat there patiently cutting each burr out and pulling each burr off the fur. He was actually quite amazed at the gripping characteristics that the burrs had on the dog's fur. And so, being a scientist, he grabbed hold of these burrs and the fur, and he put them under the microscope and started pulling them back, and eventually became the creator of Velcro. Why? He saw things differently. I don't know about you, I would have kicked the dog. But in Christian love, yeah. I'm an animal lover. I love animals, okay? They're really good on a barbecue, on a rotisserie. I'm a great animal lover. Some people love animals too much, okay? Can I just say that? There's nothing wrong with, loving animals, and all that, and I think we've got a responsibility, in the way that we treat animals and stuff, but some people love animals too much, okay? It's just like they're on equal footing. They're not, okay? If they were, they'd be standing up for themselves instead of going, woof, right? Or, I hate it when they shut down TV programs because of the cruelty to animals. And I'm going, but I really enjoyed that TV program. Why would you shut that down? Well, too many horses died. Well, that happens. Horses die. Anyway, political pressure. It's the American way. All right, number 5, last one. Everyone went, woohoo! Number 5, possessing vision will cause you to stand. These guys came along, these guys were like the Inquisition, right? These Pharisees and wouldn't sees and couldn't sees. In verse 10 it says they demanded that he speak. In verse 24, the second time they summoned the man. So they summoned him to come to them. In verse 28, they hurled insults at him. But in verse 29, it shows us how bureaucratic and judgmental they became. They said, we know that God spoke to Moses, but as for this fellow that healed you, we don't even know where he comes from. That's probably a good thing. Now listen to the man's answer in verse 30. You've got to understand, this is the guy that's been on the side of the road every day for however many years. This is how he answers, verse 30. The man answered, now that is remarkable. You don't know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes. Who knows there's a bit of attitude in that? Who knows he's gone from being a person that's being stepped on to a person that's standing? You know, he once used to be stepped over and stepped past and people would slide right by, but now he's standing. And because he's standing, he's able to stand with some attitude. Well, that's remarkable, you silly little people. You know, everyone was afraid of the Pharisees. And you've got to understand, culturally, these were the guys, right? Everyone was afraid of these guys, but not him. He's going, mate, I don't care what you guys believe. This guy, who you don't even know who he is, opened my eyes, gave me vision. Are you with me? Because, you know, just one encounter with God gives you vision for your life. You just need one encounter. You don't need 50. You don't need to come down at 60 different altar calls and hope to get it. No, just one encounter. And you can have vision for your life. Ephesians 6 verse 13 says this. It says, therefore put on the full armour of God so that when the day of evil comes. Everyone say the day of evil. Not the date, the day. The day, mate. Yeah. The day, mate. The day of evil. You may be able to stand. Everyone say stand. Stand your ground, and after you've done everything, to stand. And then it goes on in verse 4 and it says, stand firm then. And it goes on. You know that the enemy has got schemes. He's working in the background of your life. He's not the author of many things in your life. He's not very often the author of things that happen in your life, but he does jump onto the back of things that are happening in your life. And he will scheme in the background of your life until it culminates into a day of evil. Now, when days of evil come, his goal is to take ground off you. That's why Paul writes, having done everything that you possibly can, right? When you've done everything you can, just do nothing else but stand, right? Stand your ground, stand firm. And then he says, to stand. And then, in fact, in our English translations, it doesn't actually make total sense when he says to stand, because grammatically it doesn't actually make sense to stand at the end of a sentence like that. But the reason that they've done that is because the two words in the original language were together. And this is what the word means, to stand, to set against, to withstand, to resist, to oppose, to stand still, stand immovable, stand firm. It's used, the same word, Greek word, is used to describe the foundation of a building. So when he says to stand, he's saying be immovable. Right? Having done everything else that you can, just be immovable. Stand so firm that nothing's going to move you. Stand like the foundation of a building, and the whole building might fall down, but you'll still be standing. Right? He's saying when you get confronted with days of evil, just stand. Don't let the enemy take any ground off of you, because that's his goal. And, it's a game of inches. Inches add up to yards, and yards add up to miles. It really is a game of inches. You give the enemy an inch, he'll take a mile. You don't even give him an inch. Just stand. Don't allow him to move you. I just asked the musicians to come back. That'd be great. Paul Hovey, he said this. He was a philosopher in the early 1900s. And he said this. He said, a blind man's world is bounded by the limits of his touch. An ignorant man's world by the limits of his knowledge. A great man's world by the limits of his vision. A blind man's world is bounded by the limits of his touch. An ignorant man's world by the limits of his knowledge. A great man's world by the limits of his vision. We've got to have a vision. We've got to have vision no matter what you were born into, no matter what your circumstance is right now, no matter what is containing your life right at this moment, no matter how, totally separated from the possibility that exists for your life you feel right now, stand. Allow vision to come into your life. Begin to see possibility power. Begin to see what could happen. Begin to see, hey, I might be surrounded by problems, but I can see possibilities. I don't know that if you do this, but one of the things that I do when I'm surrounded by problems is I imagine the possible ways that God might work to get me out of that situation. Right? I use my imagination. And I think of things. I think of how's God going to move in this situation? I think of all the different ways God could move. And quite often he moves completely different from what I'm imagining, but that's okay. At least I want to keep myself in the zone where I'm thinking about a way out. Where I'm thinking about the vision of my future. Where I'm thinking about where I'm hooked in to what God has for my life, and I'm not going to allow anything to move me from that. There's some of you here today, you find yourself in circumstance or in situations. Maybe you were born into a situation. Well, I'm here to declare to you that you are not born that way. No matter what it is that you've experienced, no matter what circumstance you've come up against, you're not born that way. And that you can be born again. Being born again is not just about salvation. Being born again is about possibility for your life. Being born again means, the old is gone, the new has come. And that's something you appropriate every day of your life. That's something that's part of your world, every day of your life. It's not just a theological statement that you make one time. It's something that's part of your world. I'm going to be born again. I was sharing, we just had a whole bunch of people get baptized in our church. We see anywhere from 60 to 80 responses to Christ every weekend in our church. And, God's doing some pretty cool things. And, some people come and say, well, some of those people are doing it for the second time or the third time. I say, yeah, look, we know. But I don't know what time is the time for them. Do you know what time is the time? I don't care if they do it 15 times. One of those times will be the time where it hits them and it resonates with them. It's a process that people are going through. They've come from there and they've come to a point where they're responding to God. I want to be part of that process. I want to be open to that. Oh, yeah, well, that person did it for the third time. That's all right. We don't count them more than once in a year. So when we say 178 different people have given their lives to Christ in 2 months, it's 178 different people. Even though we see 60 or 80, like this weekend, we saw 80 responses for Christ in our weekend meetings. Most of them on Friday night. And why? Because we believe we're going to keep reaching to people who are far from God, who who are outside of church, what we call outsiders. They don't like being called unchurched. They don't mind being called outsiders because they're outside of church, so they're okay with that. So we believe we're going to keep reaching them. I've got a vision for those people. I've got a dream for their future. We're setting things up. We're setting up a leadership academy and all sorts of things. These are all the things we're working on because we've got vision for the future. We're setting up a leadership academy that will work as a totally secular, standalone leadership academy that will be a secular leadership academy where kids can come from school before they go to college, before they go to university, and spend a year with us and focus on leadership, being trained, and which will help them in every sphere of life. And right now we're in negotiations with how we're going to do that. It's probably going to be a 3-year process, but I've got vision for that. If I didn't have vision for it, we wouldn't have started the process. Is this making sense? We can get so stuck in our circumstances, so stuck with what's happened to us. So the enemy wants you to come down and he wants you to think small. Don't think small, think big. Think possibility. Think about the possibility power of your life. Is this making sense? God has great vision for you. He believes in you. No matter what you've been brought up as, no matter what your situation has been, God believes in you. Other people may give up on you, but when everyone else walks out of your life, Jesus walks in. It's what makes him different from Buddha and Krishna. I don't know if you've studied. I've studied many of the New Age religions over the years, and it's only Jesus who walks in. Everyone else says, work hard and you might attain nirvana, you might attain this, I'm not going to attain anything without some help. I need Jesus to walk in first. He's close to the brokenhearted. Doesn't matter how messed up you are. He loves you. Doesn't matter how many times you've messed up, how far from him you feel right now. He loves you. And that never changes. Amen.